everyone, and welcome to Thorough Newspaper Analysis, which is brought to you by Losico. So, today again, we will be discussing two articles. Both the articles are from the Hindu. The first article is titled as Separating the Wheat from the Agri Policy Chaff. Basically, this article talks about the problem or the competition that goes on with the subsidies and the investment that we put into the agriculture. And as we know that in the Indian agriculture system, a lot of subsidy is given to the farmers. So, how much is it viable or not has been discussed in this article. And the second article is again from the Hindu, which is titled as A Virus That Changes Stripes. Basically, as we know that a new strand or a new mutation of the COVID-19 has been seen in the United Kingdom. So, what can be the possible ways of studying this genome, first of all, and what can be the possible ways of curbing down this from coming to India has been discussed in this article. And finally, we have the news and flash column for our prelims exam. So, if in case you're also preparing for judicial services examination, you can definitely have a look at the Lord of the Courses, which is the Judiciary Test Prep course from Losico. The link to this course is available in the description box below, and also from the landing page, you can download free study material for your own help. Also, we're excelling into courses like CLAT, All India Bar Exam, etc. So you can also have a look at them too. With this, let's see that what is the multiple choice question from yesterday's discussion. The one-stop solution platform for all the information on oceans is, you have to tell the name of this platform. First, TechniOcean. Second, DigitalOcean. Third, MyOcean. Or fourth, none of the above. You can write down your answer in the comment section below. So this is the descriptive question for the day. What is genome sequencing? Discuss why is it important to conduct a large-scale genome sequencing to curb the spread of COVID-19. So once we're done with today's article, you'll definitely be able to understand the context of this question. So with this, let's understand the first article for the day, which talks about investment versus the subsidies in the field of agriculture. Now, amidst the ongoing debates around the three new agri laws, another question is being raised that whether the government should be using the taxpayers' money to provide subsidies to the farming community. Now, for this, we need to understand firstly that what do we mean by subsidies? So, as we know that subsidy is a kind of financial support. It's mostly a financial support that is given by the government to the farmers so that various facilities and various requirements of a good agriculture can be made pocket friendly and viable for the farmers. Like, for example, there is a huge requirement for fertilizers, and that is why it is the government that provides the farmers with subsidized rates of fertilizers. For example, if you talk about the neem coated urea, then approximately half of that of the cost of that neem coated urea is actually paid by the government. So, for example, if one packet or one unit of that neem coated urea costs rupees 100, for example, so then approximately 40 to 50 rupees of that cost is paid by the government, which actually makes it very much possible and feasible for the farmer to buy such fertilizers. Similar is the case with electricity and also the water availability and various other products that are necessary for good agriculture, and these are subsidized by the government. But what we need to understand here is that from where does the government get this money to provide this subsidy to these various facilities in the agriculture field? So definitely it is the money of the taxpayers, the money that you, I, and every other individual who pays as a tax to the government. This money is actually used by the government. I mean, a part of this money at least is used by the government to pay the subsidies for various farm activities. Now, that is why it is a huge question as to are we really able to reap the real benefits that we must get from the subsidy? And the very purpose for providing subsidy in the initial stages of our independent India was that it was very important for us to make sure that we are agriculturally and secure and we have our own food security. So, in that regard, a lot of subsidies were provided by the government. But the scenario and situation both have changed drastically since then, and now as we know that India is quite much sufficient in its food security, and even there have been instances now as we have seen that we are producing even more than what we require, than what our population requires for the consumption. So that is why here is a good question to be thought upon, that do we really need to give these subsidies to the farmers even in the current scenario or not? So for that, we need to understand the situation of agriculture or the growth in the sector of agriculture in India. So if we talk about the time period from 1950 to 2015, the share in GDP of the agriculture was 45%, and the workforce that was dependent on agriculture was 70%. So it was really, really huge. And in this regard, it was very much, to say sane, and it was very much good and logical to think that this subsidy should be provided to the agriculture, as 45% of our GDP was coming from agriculture, and 70% of our workforce was it was dependent on agriculture. But the situation since 2019-20 has changed quite much, since the share of agriculture in GDP has reached only to 16%, and the workforce dependent on this sector is just 50%. So obviously 50% is not a small share for to say, but yes, of course, as compared to 70% in the time period of 1950 to 2015, it has definitely reduced. So the erosion of farm incomes due to the growing inefficiency has taken place, due to which the GDP share of agriculture is also reduced, and that is why we must be paying attention as to how much subsidy now we should be providing to the agricultural sector. So if we talk about the total investment in agriculture, it is also diminishing. So if we talk about the 1950s, it was 18% of the total investment that we were making in the agriculture. But then again in 1980s, it reduced to 11%. And in 2014 to 19, it is reduced to merely 7.6% of total investment. So that is why it is very much important that we consider the amount of investment and subsidies that we are providing in this area. So what do we need is that we need a policy. So there are various complex problems in agriculture, and they cannot be solved through just ad hoc decision making. Like for example, what we do is that we come with some small laws, or some for the time being some kind of short term policies or ad hoc decisions. But definitely the problems that are more complex in nature. Like for example, if we talk about the very system of subsidy in India, India has moved altogether to a new regime or a new era of its food security. Now the situation that prevailed approximately 50 years ago is not something that we see today. And that is why the ad hoc policy changes are not something that would do real good. And we need to have some good policy changes and real time changes to address this very change. So India needs a policy that addresses the challenges faced in a comprehensive manner, for sure, and not just in an ad hoc or a temporary manner. Like if we take the examples of other countries, so in the United States of America, it enacts a farm law every 4 years. Since 1933, only 2% workforce is engaged in agriculture, and yet after every 4 years, they enact a new farm law in order to address any kind of changes that take place in this area. And in India, on the contrary, even till date, 50% of our workforce is dependent on agriculture, but still we do not revise the policies every, at a uniform interval. And then, if we talk about the European Union, it adopted a common agricultural policy in 1962 that addresses needs to farm sector through proactive support from the government. So, as we know that even the economies that are not too much dependent on agriculture still pay a lot of attention in forming the policies that are very much adequate for the agriculture. And on the contrary, India, which is still hugely dependent on agriculture, we're not really paying a lot of attention on the policy framing as per the needs of our sector. So let's understand that what are the issues with the farm subsidies. Now, as we already know that what do we mean by subsidies, let's understand that what are the issues which are attached with the farm subsidies. So it is provided to the farming community as successive governments failed to introduce a set of comprehensive policies and set up farmer-friendly institutions. So it was basically to improve economic viability of the sector. But now, as we know that since the time has changed, and we are not at all in the era of 1950s, wherein India was hugely struggling to have its own food security. So that is why we should be taking care of the current situation, and only then the decisions related to subsidy or the distribution of the subsidies should be taken place. Then, the continuous distribution of subsidies without proper policy framework has distorted the structure of production and resulted in excessive food stockpiling. Now, let's understand this point firstly. See, what happened was in the times of Green Revolution, in the times of 1960s and 70s, as we know that the state of Haryana and also some parts of Punjab and Rajasthan are not naturally equipped. They were actually not naturally equipped to grow rice. So the only crop that could be grown in these regions was wheat. But with the help of Green Revolution, because of the high yielding variety seeds, rice was also made possible to be grown in these areas, even though the water was not readily available. But because the government subsidized the water resources through canals and other resources, the piping system, water was brought to these areas and rice was made to be possible to be grown in Haryana and states and parts of Rajasthan. But now, if we consider the situation, the government gives a lot of subsidy on providing of this water and even the electricity for pumps, generators, etc. Due to which rice is grown in this area. But as we know that the natural resources of water are not well equipped in these areas to support huge production of rice, due to which recent reports have shown that the groundwater level of these states is depleting very quickly. Now, due to this, the farmers, obviously, because they're not bearing the brunt, or they're not bearing the burden of any kinds of resources, because the government is subsidizing these resources. So this is resulting firstly in the distortion structure, in a distorted structure of the food production, and secondly excessive food stockpiling. That even, Food Corporation of India had said that this time also we have had an excessive food stockpiling, due to which a lot of food stock goes wasted, and even it gets destroyed because we do not have the facility or huge facilities of cold stores in India. So this needs to be taken care of. And then 2018-19, India spent subsidies of $56 billion, of which 43% or 24.2 billion dollars went to low income or resource poor farmers. So the low income or resource poor farmers comprise 99.43 percent farmers in India. So we need to take care that the subsidies go to the right people, the right place, and at the right time as well. So this is the entire thing of the subsidy, because in US the subsidies are provided for $131 billion, but the value addition that is done through these subsidies is 90.8%, which is huge. And in India, the total subsidies goes for approximately $56 billion, but the value addition is only for 12.4%. So we need to really take care of the subsidies, that we are placing it into the right place and at the right direction. With this, let's see the second article for the day, which talks about genome sequencing of SARS-CoV-2. So recently, 6 passengers from UK to India were found to contain the new variant, which was N501Y mutation. As we know, that a new kind of mutation or a structural change in the COVID-19 virus has been seen, and it has been first detected in the United Kingdom. So we really, think we have to think about it, because if at all a completely new mutation of the COVID-19 is seen, then definitely it would be really difficult to curb down this virus, as the vaccines for currently we are saying that the vaccine would be efficient enough on this mutation as well. But if at all a very new mutation is taken up by the COVID-19 virus, then it might become difficult for us to stop that particular spread. So the flights from UK have been suspended to prevent the new strain from entering the country. Now let's understand that what do we mean by the genome sequencing and why more sequencing is needed. So firstly, for genome sequencing, we need to know that it means that, see, every other thing is, we're made up of DNA. So every virus, everything has its own kind of genome sequencing, its own kind of DNA. So to study the very structure and the activity or the nature of any particular, virus or any kind of cell, the genome or the DNA of that particular cell is studied and structured. So that thing is particularly in general known as genome sequencing, wherein we try to understand the nature of that particular DNA. So that is why, if at all we're able to understand the changes or the mutational changes that take place in the COVID-19 or the SARS-CoV-2 virus, it would be efficient and easier for us to develop a more effective vaccine, as well as to understand the movement and the nature of this particular virus. So why we need more sequencing? Now we can understand that the presence of the variant can only be confirmed through detailed epidemiological studies with genome sequencing data. So obviously the genome sequencing can help us understand the nature of this particular virus and how it all can be curbed, this virus. And then if we talk about the current situation, with 10.2 million cases, only 6,300 genomes have been sequenced in India, whereas on the contrary, in United Kingdom, it has only 1/4 the total number of cases as compared to India, but still approximately 157,000 genomes have been sequenced or studied in United Kingdom, and that might really lead UK to be more efficient in curbing down the COVID virus. So that is why the National Task Force on COVID-19 has recommended the setting up of this consortium, which we are calling it as the Genome Surveillance Consortium for the very much sequencing and studying of the genome of SARS-CoV-2. So these are the independent emergence of variants. This is possible due to homoplasmy. Homoplasmy is again like a uniform system of genomes or an identical genome that is available for any kind of study. So there are various studies, and they have taken up some examples of variants, like we had the N440K, and we had this current one, the N501Y mutation, which has been first identified in UK, and a strand of it has also been found in South Africa too. So that is why it is very important for us to sequence and to study the genome sequencing at a faster rate in order to understand the nature of SARS-CoV-2 virus. With this, we're done for the day. We hope it was a good and informative session for you all. So if in case you wish to download the PDF for today's slides, you can definitely join our Telegram group. The link to this group is there in the description box below. And for any other information, you can also log in, or you can also visit our website, which is www.lawseco.com. Thank you so much.